I am not threatening default.
We know we were sloppy. We know we were stupid. We know there was bad judgment.
If I'm president, I'm actually going to take responsibility and lead and get us on track to have a balanced budget.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL, a whole lot of dollars and cents tonight. I'm Richard French, and thank you for joining us. It's Wednesday evening, May 16th, and it's going to be a busy hour this evening because we begin with the Debt Fight 2.0. Remember the heated debt limit debate from the dog days of summer last year? I know we'd like to forget, but it is back. And next, could you have a Tea Party resurgence? Well, if you're going to write the obit for that party, you ought to think again. They are winning primaries across the country, and last night's surprise in Nebraska, hardly a singular exception. And later we debate the minimum wage. Even a heartfelt letter from a 12-year-old Girl Scout, not enough to warm the hearts of the New York State Senate, who wants to keep the minimum wage in the Empire State right where it is. And then Booker and Christie BFFs. Well, you heard me right, and we've got the video to prove it. What does this Republican governor and Democratic mayor with political aspirations have in common? A pretty hysterical new comedy skit. We'll show it to you. But we are in first position tonight with the start of yet another debt limit debate.
Whoa. I am not threatening default. Let's remember something. The issue here is the debt. Almost $16 trillion worth of debt. A $1.3 trillion budget deficit again this year.
That, of course, the man with the permatan, House Speaker John Boehner this morning, engaging in a little bit of political gymnastics, threatening yet another showdown on the nation's debt limit while claiming he's not threatening any default, which is what would happen, in fact, if the debt limit is not raised. And if you think you heard this debate before, you're not having a deja vu. You've heard this, and not that long ago. This time, though, there may be more to it. This debt limit fight, it may serve as a microcosm of the upcoming election and the choices that our nation and its voters are going to have come November. And I want to bring in our senior political correspondent, Andrew Whitman, who's got more.
Well, Rich, by now I have to assume that most people know what the debt limit is. It's the congressional cap on how much the U.S. can borrow at any one time. But the real focus of this fight isn't on the debt limit itself. It's really about the contrasting visions on how to organize our economy and what each party prioritizes along the way. Those priorities will be front and center throughout the rest of this election cycle and will appear in one form or another in the presidential race, the fight for the Senate, even the race for Congress in your district. For the GOP, it's all about limiting spending and doing so without raising taxes on anyone. For the Democrats, it's about tax and economic fairness while tackling debt and spending in smaller pieces. And in many ways, this debt limit debate is a proxy fight, a placeholder for the real battles over major changes that are set to hit come January 1st. The moment Ryan Seacrest hollers Happy New Year, $8 trillion worth of automatic tax increases and spending cuts kick in, including the end of all Bush tax cuts across every income level. Also, automatic defense and spending cuts agreed to as part of the super committee debacle. Plus, the payroll tax cuts and unemployment extensions vanish once the calendar reaches 2013. But each party has something it wants to protect from those automatic chopping blocks. For Republicans, it's defense cuts and tax hikes. For Democrats, it's the safety net and middle-class tax cuts. So even though none of the deadlines come before Election Day, the debate will certainly begin earlier and starting right now. And we've gotten some ideas of what each side is planning. Republicans in budget proposals being debated today have called for an end to Medicare, upping the Social Security retirement age to 68, eliminating the departments and programs that are listed here, including education and NASA, also ending the payroll and other taxes and going to a flat tax. There's even one proposal on the table that would cut the size of the entire federal government in half. Democrats, on the other hand, are taking a one-piece-at-a-time approach, looking to raise top-end taxes, bank some war savings, trim specific spending, and gradually reduce the debt and deficit. So that is the choice. Republicans say they want to starve the beast and force the cuts they want. Democrats say they want to take a more surgical approach and claim to do no harm along the way. So what are voters saying? Well, no one's polled specifically on the debt limit since the big brouhaha last summer, but more people at that point opposed a debt limit increase than supported it. But as always in polling, the devil's in the details, and while voters dislike more debt, they seem to hate the specific changes a debt limit cap would bring. When asked if lawmakers should cut Social Security, Medicare, food stamps, or Medicaid, clear majorities say absolutely not. But on defense, the one area Republicans refuse to trim, only 35% agree with them. Nearly twice as many want some measure of defense cuts. So what more do voters want? They want an approach that polls show seem more in line with, frankly, the Democratic approach. 56% say we should spend more and raise taxes. 72% think millionaires should pay at least 30% in taxes. And 68% agree that the current tax system benefits the wealthy. But all those numbers come with one major caveat. Just like the poll numbers change depending on how the questions are asked, so too do people's opinions depending on how the plans are sold. Meaning whoever does the best job convincing voters of the path to take, they'll likely win the fights in Congress and maybe the big one for the White House as well. Rich?
All right, Andrew, and let's bring in our table to talk about this. Of course, Dominic Carter, political journalist, author, Michael Long, chairman of the New York State Conservative Party, and we all met Andrew. Okay. You agree, Michael, that for as much as we're debating social issues and gay marriage and everything else, it's going to come down to JOBS, jobs in the economy, and who's got the better prescription here to get America back on track, right?
It's going to come down to jobs and the economy, taxes and spending. That's going to be the main issues. The president and his team are trying to use wedge issues to get away from that conversation because of his failed 3 years of dealing with the economy. You know, you have to understand, and you know that for a fact, Richard, the Republicans in Congress have passed budgets. The Senate have refused to pass a budget or even entertain a budget. And when the president had both houses and had control of both houses, the Democrats in the House and the Democrats in the Senate, they failed to pass a budget then and deal with the crisis that we're facing. We have a real severe crisis. Look at Greece. Look what's happening in Europe. We're on the same train that they are on.
But you also know we got to do some pieces, Michael. We'll talk about in 1 second what's happening here and what did or didn't happen in the first 3 years of the Obama years. But what's going on in Europe right now is they're giving the middle finger to the austerity plan. Country after country saying thanks but no thanks. Whether they're right or wrong to do it's a different debate. But the voters aren't having it.
They can give the middle finger to whoever they want, but the reality is if they want to have a sovereign country and a sovereign nation, they got to deal with reality.
Right. Let's come back to America, and I want to look ahead here, guys, but let's look back. Michael said, hey, don't blame the Republicans. At least they put forward budgets, and there's some merit to it, Andrew. There's a little bit more to it, though.
Well, I mean, the budget argument is becoming something of a chestnut in all of this. It's not like Congress is shut down. It's not like the federal government is shut down. There have been bills that have kept the government going. So there is a plan. It's just happened piecemeal, one bill at a time, as opposed to an overarching budget.
But isn't the real thing, we're going to have a fight, Dominic, about taxes. Okay, that's going to be the first thing. Bush tax right now, you got two different plans. One is Democrats say, hey, keep the tax cuts for everybody except for the top end. Let's bring them back up to 39, like what they paid in 2000 when Bill Clinton was president here, instead of 35. And we all know it's not really 35 with all the deductions and everything else. Republicans say, no, it's all or nothing. You don't pass this thing en masse here. We're not going to do this for lower middle class and everything else. Everybody's going to get their taxes raised if you don't do it in the top end. Politically, and again, as we learned, we live in an age of bumper stickers. You can't put it on a bumper sticker. You can't sell it. Whose message is going to resonate more? The polls say, from Andrew's end, people say, hey, 1%, if they could pay it in 2000, they ought to pay it now. But if it's going to cost everybody a tax cut, I'm not so sure.
It seems on the surface that Obama's argument, the president's argument, is more in tune with the 99% of the population. Me and Chairman Long, who I have great respect for, will disagree on this. We can call us whatever you want. What it's going to come down to is that Republicans want to embarrass Obama. That's what it's always been about from day one. They want the tax cuts and they want budget cuts, mostly to social programs. That's all they want to hear, period.
But Don, let's say whatever the motive is, okay, let's even table that for a second. We got to do some stuff. We might have danced around this last summer, but there's real consequences.
There was real consequences before. The consequences have nothing to do with this.
You're convinced? For me, I think we could have the longest lame duck session in modern history here.
This is politics. Consequences have nothing to do with it. You know why? Look at what happened the last time around. The U.S. credit rating went down for the first time, I believe, in recent memory. The Wall Street Journal was begging Republicans, stop killing yourself on this debt crisis. Consequences have nothing to do with this. This is politics.
Something else to point out here, too, that the two plans that we're seeing are really extreme versions of the different arguments.
You're right, Andrew, but you and I both know, in years past, that's just how this started, but then there was compromise in the middle.
Right.
We don't hear compromise
Well,
anymore.
and that's
You
where the
don't,
danger
you don't
is.
hear, look, I said earlier in this show that, in fact, it's not about politics. It's not about embarrassing Obama as a president. This is about what some people believe to be is good for the future of the nation. Now, the Republicans
But what about
passed-
what Democrats feel?
the
we
Repu-
know
I
what
mean-
Republicans feel, but
I know-
it's two
yeah,
major parties.
the
What about what
Democrats
Democrats
feel that fairness means punishing success. That's
So-
what the
so it should
Democrats
go
feel.
down the way Republicans say?
Anybody who's successful,
Mr. Chair?
just punish them. All right, by taxing them out of business and
The
stifling job
way
growth.
Ronald Reagan punished them, the way
No,
George H.W.
no,
Bush punished them,
Ronald
because we're
Reagan,
talking about
yeah.
rates that are lower than they were under those two presidents.
Yeah, look, what we have to deal with is, and Richard touched the point, we have a budget that was passed, a number of budgets passed by Republicans. At one time in history, there was compromise. Why doesn't the Senate deal with the budgets that were passed and bring about the compromise? We have a president that initiated a commission with 6 people. The Congress and the Senate went along with it. They came out with an answer to what the future should be. It wasn't the Republicans that rejected it. It wasn't
There's
the
a lot of
Democrats.
debate. Let's be
It
fair,
wasn't-
Michael. Simpson
well,
Bowles. Let's not make it sound like
it
Republicans
wasn't-
are wrapping
well,
their
let me
arms
finish
around
the
it.
statement. It wasn't the Republicans that thought we rejected. It wasn't the Democrats that thought we rejected. It was the President of the United
But wait a
States.
minute,
His
that-
commission.
that's where we
He
got-
didn't pick up the ball and show leadership.
That's where we got the
and-
deal for $10 of cuts for $1 of tax increases. And you remember every presidential candidate raising their hand, I would reject that deal
You gotta-
outright.
you gotta
That
remember,
was Simpson Bowles.
You talked about Ronald Reagan raising taxes.
No,
before,
at a higher tax rate than where they are now.
it was the Democrats that offered to cut, but if you allowed a tax increase, that they
To be
would
fair,
cut
Obama
taxes,
is
and they
offering cuts
betrayed
as
them.
well. It's the scope, and I think what we just had here for the first 10 minutes or so, this is going to get played out between now and then. There's 2 different versions for what America should look like. And don't you give me the finger, the other different finger. You know we're on a break here. She's freaking out on me already in there in the booth. Don't kill me even more. All right.